inspired to push through. Because there's a spark in you. Breakthrough or bust. Hello. Welcome to Breakthrough or Bust. I'm Kalua, and I am super excited to welcome my dear friend and future husband, Jeremy Todd. Jeremy is also a podcast host of a fantastic podcast called The Positive Side Podcast, and it's really incredible. If you haven't heard it yet, if you know me, you probably have, because I'm always promoting it. But if you haven't heard it, go check it out. He's got some really interesting speakers on there and just really great topics. So it's something worth listening to for sure. But I get to put him in the interviewee spot today and let him get grilled. So this is going to be a little bit of a new position for him. So Jeremy, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Chloe. Thank you for having me on the show. I am stoked to be here. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. So finally, today's the day. So once again, thank you for having me on. I am, actually tomorrow's my birthday. So again, 43-year-old guy from Indiana, the podcast host for the last 4 years for The Positive Side. And I just like to be the most authentic, genuine person I possibly can be. And it's changed my life for the best. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that today. But, that I guess that sums it up. I'm a father of 3 as well. And, I think that pretty much sums it up who I am. Pretty easy, right?
Well, and I think, 4 years of podcast hosting really comes through, because as soon as you start talking, it's like, that radio voice comes across.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We can tell you're an expert. So, of course, on Breakthrough or Bust, we are inspiring others to keep, pushing through to their breakthroughs, because, that breakdown before the breakthrough can be a beast. And, sometimes we want to back down and just give up, and what's on the other side is so worth it. So we're here to inspire each other. So we tell stories. And Jeremy, can you share with us a challenge that you've been through?
The biggest challenge I've ever had in my entire life is the lack of self-confidence, and I reflect that through quick plug of my book that I wrote a while ago. But it's just really I had my self-confidence was terrible. It was down in the dumps. I beat myself up. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm 5'2", 135, soaking wet. So I'm not the biggest guy in the world, and a lot of times that resonated, and that visual perspective of who I thought I wasn't reality. It was I beat myself up constantly, and that lack of self-confidence led to a lot of tough things. It led me to drinking way too much, to partying too much, because I was trying to find that missing piece to myself, and I didn't know what it was. And over a long time, just thinking and meditating and listening to different things, and just really being and identifying who I am and being okay with that was the biggest thing for me, and it's completely changed my life. And, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be 43 tomorrow, but this isn't something that I figured out, 20 years ago. That's something I figured out in the last 3 or 4 years. So everybody out there listening, no matter what age you're at, you can always redefine yourself and find who you are, and find that confidence. For me, that confidence, like I said, just came literally 3 or 4 years ago in my late 30s, early 40s. And I began to realize that I am enough. I am cool enough. I am Jeremy enough. And that is okay with everybody, because, I think back, it may not be okay with everybody, but it doesn't matter. It's okay with me. And I think that was the biggest thing that I identified was I'm just perfect the way I am. I'm perfectly imperfect. And what makes me who I am is, understanding that and realizing to myself that it is okay to be Jeremy Todd. So that's been the biggest thing for me. And if I look back now, it's resonated into so many more opportunities now, because now I'm confident being a podcast host. I'm confident with my body, with who I am and my mind. And when you release all that negativity, there's so many other opportunities that come into your life, and there's so many doors that are open. They've always been there. They've always been right outside of my fingertips, but I've never had the opportunity to open those up, because I wasn't confident with myself. I wasn't sure enough that I could accomplish anything. I wasn't sure I could accomplish different goals. But after identifying with who I am and being happy with who I am, all the opportunities to come flying in and my life is completely changed. So that right there is the biggest breakthrough that I've ever had in my entire life,
I
is
love
the
that.
breakthrough of self-confidence.
Love it. And I think it's one that probably like 90% of people can identify with. It's something that most people struggle with. Um, and it shows up in so many different ways. For some of us, it's in relationships or in business, or there's all these different places that lack of confidence or self-worth can really hit us hard. Can you think of like a specific situation or area where that really was showing up for you a lot?
Well, you know what, while you were talking there, I just had another thought too, that, it's that self-confident part of it is extremely important, because it's if I look back in my past, there's times I may have not spoken up. I may have not raised my hand in a class or a job and saying, my idea is important enough. And I look back at all the opportunities that may have passed me by not just saying that, or not accepting that, that I have greatness within. I talk about that all the time on the show, but um, I'd always, I'd be the guy in the back of the room. And I think this is resonates with a lot of people, because, when we're all sitting down and we're all in meetings or classrooms or whatever the case is, and we have these ideas, yet our self-confidence won't allow us to speak up. And it's halted me for years and years and years, especially throughout my career, where I had a good idea but never said anything. And it's one of those things that, there's that old saying about, I think it's like something about how the most millionaires in the world are in the grave because they take all their ideas with them to the deathbed, and they never get out there and speak and speak up. But we all have great ideas and unique ideas. But until we accept that self-confidence part of it, that the ideas that we have are great and exceptional, we're missing opportunities. We're missing those chances. And I used to be worried about what other people think, and I think that's a reason why we don't speak up. But at the end of the day, uh, it doesn't reflect on them, it reflects on us. And that's why it's so important for us to speak up and speak out when we have ideas, when we have, our creativity is so unique to us, and that idea needs to be shared, because at the end of the day, that idea that you may have or you may be holding could change someone else's life. And it's a little bit of a 360. It becomes selfish for not having the self-confidence. And we
Yeah.
really need to make sure that we get our ideas out there and talk about it, because what we know could literally change someone else's life. So it's not, it's selfish. And we need to understand that our ideas are spectacular. They're great. And who gives a shit what anybody else thinks? It's what we think. It's what we think of ourselves. And sharing that power and sharing that insight is extremely, extremely valuable.
I love it. And you kind of remind me of, me. I was like this precocious little child that said everything that crossed her mind. And, really years and years of being programmed by teachers and parents and, adults everywhere,
Yeah.
like, please be quiet, stop saying what's on your mind, stop, don't do that. And really our school systems are set up as like, we reward status quo, not independent thinking. And
Exactly.
so most of us are in this place, like, where we've been taught not to speak up, where it wasn't rewarded. um like, what do you say to that, to the people who are maybe feeling like they've been programmed for so long for the
Well,
opposite?
Well, they have been programmed, and I think that you're exactly right. That is a problem with the school system. It's a problem that we are just, and you nailed it exactly right. That we are told throughout our life not to speak up, just to fall in line. And I think that's an overall problem with society in general. That they don't want people to speak up and stand up, because it takes other people's light away. But with me, I'm not trying to take anyone's light away. I'm trying to make our lights brighter together. And I think
Mm,
that's one thing we really need to think about when that happens, because it's not easy. It's not easy to just flip a switch and to speak up, because, again, I keep saying it, but like you said, when you go back to the school system, we're all just we sit in these perfect little lines, and we can only speak up when we raise our hand, and we're told that maybe our answer isn't correct. And I think that's another thing too, that we've been told maybe our ideas aren't right, and we take this with us for years and years and years, which
yeah.
there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's different ways to get to the same result, and I think that's extremely important to understand as well.
I love it. And, you kind of reminded me of the whole idea of, coming from a place of empowered versus wounded, so
Yeah,
that when we're speaking up and we're doing it to share and to be of service and, to help the world, that's empowered. But when we're
absolutely.
doing it just to, hear our own voices
Yeah.
or just, grab all the attention, that would be more of a wounded. And so, yeah, so I think helping people to remember that, your intention is a big part of it. So you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm taking away from others when that's not your intention.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that will come through.
And whenever I have conversations with people, and sometimes you can even look at them in the face and you can see that they want to say something.
Mhm.
And I've got a big personality, so sometimes I take over a room because I've got this big personality, but at the same time, that's not my intention, because what I want to hear is feedback, and I want to learn from other people, and I really reach out to those people too. And I know you've done it before, but when you look at somebody and they want to say something, so it's almost like it stops you in your conversation, and you just say to them, "Do you have something to say?" And then it kind of puts them on Front Street, but it's that confidence level that we need to get past, to where we can actually stand up for ourselves, and instead of having to be asked what we want to say, to speak up and say what we want to say, because we learn so much more together. And we check the ego at the door. There's no right or wrong answer. We're all going down the same journey, but it's so important that we all talk about our ideas, and enjoy the conversation, and speak up when we have to, because I don't want anybody to leave anything on the table for me, because I have so much to learn. You may know
Mhm.
something that I don't know, and if you don't ever speak up, I'll never learn that from you. So that's the other side of it too, that we all have these great ideas, but we've got to be able to speak up and share those ideas.
I love that. And I'm like getting all watery eyed because I just love the fact that you're giving people voice.
Yeah.
You might just in that moment, in doing that, initiate that for them going forward, where they
Hmm.
are going to do it from now on. And I love that. I love that. And I know a big part of why you do podcasting and why you push other people to do it too. Well, encourage, not push.
Yeah.
Encourage other people to
Encourage.
do it
Yeah.
too, is because everybody's voice should be heard. And that's just such a big part of you. I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's interesting too with the show, that the emails that I get from people that basically share that exact same story. They've been beat down. They've been, um, they're fighting depression. They're in just a funky place. And when I can speak up and share my authentic, no,
Awesome.
authentic self,
There it
I
is.
can share my authentic self with the world when I talk on my show. It just allows other people to say, you know what, if this guy is telling his whole life story, maybe I can speak up. And then when people speak up, you just feel better. You feel
Yeah.
better to get it off your chest, and you may be holding something in forever and ever and ever, and you don't know how to. So throughout my show, I think that's so important, that I am very, very authentic, and I have people that rely on that authenticity, because it just allows other people to be authentic with themselves. And when I get
Mhm.
these emails from people, I got one yesterday. It's just very, very, it's gut wrenching. It's heartfelt, but I can feel their emotions through an email about what they're going through, and you can almost feel it by the time they finish the email. You could see where their wording is a little bit different, because it just feels good to get it out. It feels good to
Yeah.
talk about it, and it feels good also to tell somebody that, and this is kind of weird too, but you can tell somebody that you don't actually know, but you know that they will listen and understand and not judge. And
Mhm.
that's one of the most important things about my show, is that I put it all out there. I'm never going to judge, and I just want to listen and help people get better.
Love it. I think culturally for so long, we've put up these beautiful little pictures of what everything looks like. And I think that's part of why people are afraid to speak up and why they're even afraid to really push through, to their next level, because they feel like something might be wrong with them. Nobody
Yeah,
else is like this. Everybody else has this perfect life. I'm the only one, and it's like, as people start saying stuff, it's like, oh, you too, really,
absolutely.
and it's nobody. I mean, it's just throw a rock and somebody's got the same situation. But
Yeah.
because we've been taught for so long to not put that out there and to not air the dirty laundry, then people start to feel isolated. And I think that is sometimes one of the strongest holders. I mean, it's like when you're in an abusive situation, what do? They isolate you.
Absolutely.
So connection is such an important thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's changed my life to be able to open up. But, I guess it's changed my life to open up. But like you just said, that it's changed my life more to hear other people have the same struggles. And then we can both talk about them. And you just feel so much better that, there are other people out there like you, that we're all trying to get better. It's not the end of the world. We've got these demons that we're fighting, but you're not the only one fighting the demons. We're in this together. And the more we talk about, the more we share, the faster we get to the finish line, to where we feel better a lot quicker. And that's why I love being authentic, and I love people that are authentic with me and just telling me what they feel and what they think. And man, it's just it's a game changer for sure. It's a game changer for me, my personal life, business life. I mean, everything physically. When you hold on to these stresses, it wears on you physically, and it changes your DNA. It changes who you are. So there's so many reasons to talk about them and get them off your chest. It'll change your life. And like I said, if I tie it all back to being the confidence thing, it just allows you to be more confident as well, because you just don't care what anybody else thinks. We're all in it together. We all want to get better.
Yeah. And I'm hearing that, getting that feedback really fuels you and fuels your show.
Well, 100%. Yeah. And I love reading some of those and sharing some of the stories. But, there was a story about a few months ago, and I think I told you about it, but, a young lady reached out and she said that she tried to commit suicide, and she said, thankfully it didn't work. And my podcast, listening to the podcast, completely changed her life, and it allowed her to not focus on herself anymore. It allowed her to reach out to others and talk to them about what her struggles were, about and she actually attempted suicide. But like I said, thankfully she didn't die. But she talks about that, and she's very, very authentic, and it gave her a purpose to her life that by talking about what she went through, it changed so many other people's lives. And she shared that message with me, and that changed my life. I mean, when you get stuff like that, it's selfishly that's the first person I think about is myself. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's because it did change my life. But also, right after that, obviously you think about this other person, all the lives that she's changing. So
you've activated her voice.
Putting that message out
so
there.
The ripple
so
continues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Love it. And that is also a great reminder. Hello, folks, like, comment, subscribe on these podcasts and shows.
Right. That's right.
We usually save that for the end, but it just sort of worked its way in. So talk to me a little bit about, how did you overcome this? You had the realization that, like, hey, confidence is a problem. So what did you start doing once you became aware?
Well, the biggest thing I guess initially you have to understand that it doesn't happen instantly. There's no magic pill. There's nothing you can just take, and you're not going to change one day. That is not going to happen. But what it goes back to is these small things throughout the day. It's affirmations, it's meditation, it's listening to motivational podcasts, it's reading different books. But you have to be very intentional about that and not miss days, because we fall back to default, right? We go back to default Indiana, default North Carolina, or default California, wherever you are, and you get back into that funk again. But if you continue to go down that road and understand that every little step that you take is that much closer to where you want to be, it does make a big difference. You're not going to change right away. It may take a year. It may take 6 months. It may take a week. It may take 10 years. It doesn't matter, because everyone's journey is completely different. But what it is it's intentional. It's intentionally listen to the podcast every single day. I don't miss a day to listen to some sort of motivational podcast. And it changes my perspective, and it changes my direction for that day. I may wake up in a shitty mood for no reason at all, but if I can go back and look at my affirmations, I can think about all the things that I'm grateful for, that attitude of gratitude that Zig Ziglar talks about all the time. Those are the little things that you can shift that mindset right away early, so it doesn't get out of control, and it doesn't turn into, maybe 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. Maybe it's just a little bit in the morning until I get my mind right and switch that to actually having a better day. And I guess that's the biggest thing. You have to train your mind. It's like anything else. It's like,
I was just thinking, it's a muscle. Yep. It's going to the gym.
It's like going to the gym. Yeah. You got to work it out every single day. And if you miss a day, you got to get back on it the next day, because the longer and longer you stay away from that, you're getting worse and worse shape. Your mind is exactly the same way. It's working on it every single day, getting better every day. But eventually over time, you become stronger, you become more positive, more confident, and you start learning things from different types of people and understand that we're all in this together. But again, you just got to do it every single day, and that's how I got over it. It wasn't just, I'm tired of being this way. It was very, very intentional. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. 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 Coming at it from a place more of empowerment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah. And, it just I recently talked about, I think that was the last one I did, was that whole new level, new devil type thing.
Mm.
And so just if we're using that same scenario of going to the gym, you hit this new fitness level. If you stay at the same routine, things might not really, like, you might see a decrease. Actually,
Yeah.
you might have to up level a bit to
Yeah.
keep your current results. And same idea, like as you're doing your healing journey, sometimes you heal one part, but then you get to this other layer where it sort of resurfaces again in a different way. And so now again, you got to really be on that mindset workout.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to listen to different types of things. I listen to, Joe Rogan podcast, or I listen to I got a good buddy, Dave Anderson's got a great show. But I listen to different things every single day because, like you said, if you work on one thing over and over and over, you start lacking in other areas. So I try and mix things up. I listen to, any kind of story, any kind of podcast where you can learn something from it makes you a better person. It makes you that much stronger. That makes you that much confident. So when a random situation, a random conversation comes up, you can get into the conversation and talk about something that you've actually recently heard or whatever the case is, but that gives you confidence. So it's a combination of not just doing this one thing over and over and over. It's mixing it up and reading a good book. I mean, there's so many good books out there to read that have changed my life as well. So you have to do different things to make sure that your game is, or you don't exceed in one area and then fall in another area. There's a great thing too that I think I've shared this with you actually. It's called the ideal wheel. And what the ideal wheel does is it ranks 1 through 10, you rank different areas of your life. And what happens is when you rank those areas and you realize, like, oh shit, this one area of my life is, I rank myself a 3, that wheel is not going to run correctly. It's going to, anything like a car or something, that you're just going to have that clunk in the wheel. So what the job is to make sure that we try and get all these levels to a level 10, to where we can actually have that wheel rolling in all areas of our life. But it's a great way to identify that area that you may be missing, that you don't even realize it. But that goes back to working on different areas every single day to get better all the way around.
Well, and I love that too, because, sometimes, we want to go and put out the fire, right? And if we're trying to do everything at once, sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mentioned that yesterday. Like, at one time, my self-care routine was the most stressful part of my day, trying to work it all in.
Oh,
so
sure.
I have to, now I kind of break it up. All right, today gratitude, tomorrow tapping, the next day this, and, and break it all up. So, for a kind of a creative brain like mine, I don't get bored. And then secondly, I'm kind of hitting all these different things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extremely important. I work on it every day in different areas. And, there's other areas too that you can work on too. It's not just listening to podcasts or reading books. It's going for a walk. It's getting outside the nature. It's having a good conversation with a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time. But again, it goes back to being intentional as well. You have to actually seek these things out to be able to get better. And if you sit back and don't do that, your life's not going to change. You're going to stay in the exact same spot you are year after year after year. And that's the scariest thing in the world, to do that. So
yeah. When you think about, sometimes when after like a year or 2 years have gone by, and something you had thought about doing, but you're like, oh, that's too long, it's going to take 2 years. And there you are at the other end of 2 years, like, oh, I could have been done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you just, and really, like you said, that intentional picking a time, just pick a time that's reasonable and realistic for you. And it could be 10 minutes. It can be, whatever you're sustainably able to dedicate, and then just do that.
Just do it. But you got to put it in your schedule and be intentional and tell people about it, and tell people what you're learning, and share the gift of growth. And it's a great thing to share, because you feel better and it makes other people feel better, and it also inspires them.
So what kind of, nugget of advice would you like to share? Like, what do you either wish that you knew, or now that you're on the other side, what do you want to share with others?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, and this isn't something that's groundbreaking, but one of the things that really helped me kind of 10x my life was it sounds so silly, but I turned my car into a classroom. I literally I don't listen to music in my car ever. If I'm going to the gas station, the grocery, I'm going to work, it doesn't matter. I turn my car on and there's a podcast that I'm listening to or an audiobook. And again, that's talking about being very, very intentional. Like I don't need to listen to the songs that I know every single word to that I've heard 10 million times. I get it. I've got them locked up. I know the songs now. I don't need to do that anymore. I need to turn my car into a classroom. I learned so much more in my car than I do anywhere else because it's just me, it's the road, and it's whoever's talking to me through the speakers or whatever show I decide that day. And that really has completely changed my life because we talk about, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to listen to podcasts. I don't have enough time to listen to an audiobook. We are all in our car for a certain amount of time, whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or half, whatever that time is, you have that time. So if you turn your car into a classroom and you have and like you were kind of saying earlier, if I have an 8-hour audiobook and I turn my car into a classroom, I don't have time while I'm at home because I've got yard work and the kids and I got all these other things going on. However, when I'm in the car, you listen to 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. And then before you know it, you just listen to an entire audiobook. And then you can tell people, oh my gosh, I listened to that audiobook. I read that book, or quote unquote, read that book. But that's something that's really changed my life for sure, is turning my car into a classroom.
No, I love that. And I think it's fantastic. I remember, working with somebody at one point and, she was really overwhelmed with the idea of, I want to be reading, this much and I can never get to it and this, that, and I have hours every day dedicated to Carline for picking up and dropping off her
Yeah.
child at school. And I was like, well, why don't you get them on audio? And it was like, oh, and
Yeah.
so suddenly, that time that she felt like was wasted every day, like it was almost like it was this negative for her, suddenly became this major positive, and she was
Oh yeah.
looking forward to it. So yeah, no, I think that's great because, um, especially now as people are starting to head back and, you know, they
Yeah.
might be feeling a little bit like, oh man, this was so much easier when I was at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
so, get something out of it for sure. And I know I've listened to entire books and even now, because I tend not to drive quite as much, but when I do, I'm like, all right, so how far am I going? That's about 10 minutes. Okay, here's a podcast.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
I choose the podcast on how long it is.
Yeah, and again, you're intentional about it, and goes back to everything we're talking about today. Is just you have to be intentional about all these things. You can't sit on the sidelines anymore. You have greatness within, and we got to get that out. And the only way to do it is to be intentional about it. Build that self confidence through different audiobooks, podcasts, walking outside, all these things. But you just have to go out and do it. Done is the new perfect. It doesn't have to be what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be what you're saying. It can be anything. But we've got to take action. If we don't take action, we will be in the exact same spot we are year after year after year. And that's the scariest thing you could live with.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And I feel like that is a great place to drop the mic.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today, Jeremy, and especially on your birthday eve.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm so grateful for you being here, and I'm so happy that you've shared. And I know so many people are going to relate to this one as well.
I hope so.
I just want to remind all of you to keep pushing through because there's a spark in you. And thank you so much for listening.